Hello, Ryan. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Keith. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. We were laughing because I was blue a few minutes ago, and then you couldn't see me because the lighting was wrong. So we're working out the details. That's what you get when you work with people who are doing it volunteer work. So
That's right.
anyhow, today's topic is government benefits. I know it's a hot topic for a lot of people, and I want to make sure we do a good job. So don't feel pressed to get it all done today, Ryan. If you can't, let's make sure we get it complete. So as usual, we'll start out with you introducing yourself and who you are and what you guys do, etc.
Sure. My name's Ryan Platt. We have a firm called A Special Needs Plan, and what we do is help families figure out what they need to do for their child's short-term security, but also obviously long-term security, and then coordinate that and link that back into the plan for the parents and how that impacts siblings as well. So kind of a very coordinated family plan to ensure a great lifestyle for everybody.
Well, great, Ryan. Well, I appreciate that. And my name is Keith Caldwell. I'm with Failure to Plan, and I am not a financial planner or an attorney or anyone in that kind of thing. I'm just a dad who was just trying to figure it out for himself and figure there might be other parents out there who wanted some information to help plan for the day when we're no longer here and who's going to take care of our kids. So that's how Ryan and I met. Is I'm going on my journey, my own journey of discovery, and Ryan's been kind enough to sort of walk me through the steps, and I really appreciate that. So with that, Ryan, I'll let you dig in. So government benefits. I know one of the questions came up for one of the viewers. I want to make sure we touch on that real quickly. If you could sort of talk about the benefits available to a child prior to 18 and after 18 and the differences in the eligibility. So that's from our own Sherry Scruggs.
Awesome. Awesome, and every state's going to be a little bit different in reference to what they offer before the age of 18. But just as kind of a general overview, some of those benefits that we think about, Medicaid, SSI, which is that supplemental security income, or as we are in California, as I say every time, Medi-Cal. In California is kind of their Medicaid program.
Right.
Those two types of government benefits are going to be needs-based, meaning they are financially based benefits. So not only do you have to qualify on the diagnosis and disability front, but you need to qualify financially. So Medicaid and SSI have an asset qualification. And that's at a federal level, and right now that number is $2,000 worth of assets. So if you have over $2,000 worth of assets, or your child does, then they're not going to qualify for those two types of government benefits. Now, Sherry asked a great question about before age 18 and after age 18. When you're looking at those two types, before age 18, the Medicaid system and SSI system will look at the parent's income and assets to qualify the child based on the parent's financial situation. When your child reaches the age of 18, that changes because, again, at 18, and then we talked a little bit about this on the guardianship program a couple months back, is that at age 18, the government looks at your child and says, well, you're an adult now. And because of that change in status for them, now SSI and Medicaid will look at just your child's income and assets and not include the parents in that qualification for those two needs-based benefits, Medicaid and SSI. So with that being said, one of the things that's important to do is make sure that, one, as parents we educate ourselves, but then two, that we educate our extended family, right? And depending on how old our children are and how old and our family situation, we may have, our parents, meaning our children's grandparents, or aunts and uncles, that maybe they've been putting away money and they've been buying savings bonds, or they've been buying mutual funds, or they have some type of investment account that has your child's name on it. Well, at age 18, that is their property, and so any money in those kind of an accounts will be counted towards that $2,000 number of a resource. And so what we need to do is make sure that we communicate, and we're going to be talking about communication strategies in one of our upcoming Hangouts. We want to communicate with extended family so they know that, so that, again, you can take the necessary actions so that if your child needs those benefits, that nothing kind of gets in the way of them being able to receive them at age 18.
Okay. It sounds to me, Ryan, like it's a much more difficult thing to qualify when the child's under 18, because in reality, a parent needs to have really no assets at all to be able to qualify for those services, which is counterproductive, I guess, if you're trying to provide a nest egg for your child in the future. So it seems like that's a hard barrier to overcome for people prior to 18. And with proper planning, you can make sure the child is set up with special needs trusts and other things that we've talked about and will continue to talk about. They can have assets in a different account that don't qualify. I know you'll cover that a little bit today as well, but it just seems like a very tough thing to do with qualify prior to age 18 if you have any assets at all.
Right. And it is, because, again, you're before that age 18, you're trying to do a lot of different things, right? You're trying to save for yourself, for your own future. So hopefully you have some assets there. You're trying to save for your child's future, and you're trying to save for your other children's future if you have more than one. So you're absolutely right, Keith. It's very difficult to qualify for that type of Medicaid SSI. Now, what we also need to understand that there are also what are called Medicaid waiver programs in different states, and different states will have different names for them. But basically they are waiver programs or alternative programs to kind of the general Medicaid qualifications. And what that does is it basically waives some of those more stringent the financial qualifications for certain Medicaid programs. So there are families that will have these kind of waiver programs that, even though the parents have, could have substantial income, or at least more than what Medicaid will allow them to qualify for, will have more assets than $2,000, depending on your state and their waiver program, in conjunction with your child's abilities, right? Kind of where they are on the ability scale. Right. What they're able to do. There may be services that are going to be paid for by the government programs that you could still access. So things like in-home therapy, right, or with kind of those in-home support programs. Certain states will allow you to possibly qualify for a certain number of hours every month. Possibly respite services, right? You can get some respite services on some of those waiver kind of programs. So what I would do is as a parent, I wouldn't just say, well, I have more than $2,000 and I make too much income to qualify financially. I guess I'll just have to wait till 18. What I would say to you is don't do that. Contact kind of your local Social Security office, or kind of a local advocacy organization, whether it's an autism society or an ARC in your local area, or maybe a Down syndrome association, or an Easter Seals, or something like that. And they may be able to guide you in terms of, what, you should go here in your local area, and they might be able to help you qualify for some of those waiver type benefits.
Right. Okay. I appreciate you sort of answering that. I know we've sort of stepped into some things that you're going to talk about anyway, so I'll let you go back and take to the floor and talk about government benefits in general. So it sounds like there's SSI and there's Medi-Cal in California. Are there other
Right.
types of benefits that are out there that we should be concerned with or thinking about? Health benefits? I mean, this is a novice talking, so.
Yeah. Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's certainly, depending on when your child was diagnosed, and
Why do you say
what.
that? Why do you say that when he was diagnosed? What does that mean?
Yeah, I mean, because what I'm thinking about is when you think of the government benefits system, you can almost think of it in kind of three segments, right? There's kind of the Medicaid and SSI area that's going to be financially and needs based, and then there is another area that is going to be called social security disability income, that is not going to be needs-based at all, but it's purely based on the disability. Usually that comes into play when our diagnosis might be a little bit later in life. So if someone's listening and maybe their child was diagnosed with a mental illness later on in life, maybe in their 20s, maybe they worked for a little while, they may be able to get Social Security disability income regardless of kind of assets or income that they have. So it's not a financially needs-based. And then kind of Medicare will funnel into a role in that with SSDI after basically a 2-year waiting period. If you qualify for SSDI, you have to wait 2 years, and then Medicare would be accessible in terms of a health care benefit. And then you kind of have, what I call SSA, which is basically what everybody knows as Social Security retirement. And this is an interesting one, as Keith and I were talking a little bit offline. The ARC of North Carolina contacted me to come speak at their state conference about a very interesting kind of topic and a very interesting kind of slant on this kind of planning. And they kind of labeled it "afraid to retire."
Wow.
Yeah, which totally I never really thought too much about that, but those parents who are closer to retirement certainly are probably thinking about it a little bit more, right? And their children are adults now, so it's their adult child they're thinking about. They're getting closer to that point of either retiring or kind of more of feeling their own mortality. But one of the reasons that they said that they're kind of afraid to retire is because they know that their child's benefits may change when they start to retire. And here's what I mean by that. If your child was diagnosed before the age of 22 and has been considered disabled before the age of 22, when you retire, your child will now receive a benefit based upon your Social Security income. So, for example, let's say somebody's Social Security income is $1,800 a month. Well, now your child will automatically move into kind of a different system in government benefits, and now they'll receive 50% of that number.
Okay.
And so the reason that's important is, again, there's also income qualifications to make sure we keep Medicaid, and it starts to have issues at about $1,000 a month of income for individuals with disabilities. And so the reason that it's important to understand when you get to that time frame of retirement and looking at your own retirement, your own nest egg, is that we want to ensure that you obviously take your Social Security at the proper time, right? And right now, for different ages, you can receive it as early as 62 or as late as age 70. But it's going to be differing amounts at each age. And so one thing that parents want to consider who are getting to that point, I don't know if we have any online at this time, but is when you're looking at your Social Security choices, one thing you really need to be cognizant of is, okay, what will my Social Security income choice for my retirement, what will that provide for my child, and will that cause them any issues in continuing qualifications for Medicaid and those support services?
That's pretty significant. I mean, so they don't, I don't know, what's the phrase, they don't discount that? The feds don't discount that and say, hey, this is coming from us anyhow. Why are we penalizing someone for getting this benefit? It doesn't work like that, I take it?
It doesn't, unfortunately. So I had a family come in just last day, and this is kind of a situation for them. And so all of a sudden, with this new, because they didn't know that was going to happen, right? That their adult daughter was on SSI, right? Because they did everything right, no assets in her name. They get an SSI. All of a sudden, dad retires, and now all of a sudden they got a different check, right? All of a sudden the check went up,
Right.
and it was over that $1,000. So now all of a sudden, now they have to in order to keep Medicaid, because they're over the $1,000, now they have to pay a deductible to Medicaid to keep Medicaid.
Wow.
Right? Yeah, on a monthly basis.
Ouch.
Right? And again, it's a pretty big number on the deductible, right? All of a sudden, I think her income ended up being $1,200 a month, and the Medicaid deductible is $900.
So she's got to pay 300 of that, or 900 of that?
Yeah, so she gets $300, but she gets to keep all the Medicaid services, which for her is every day for 9 hours.
Oh.
So it's still, it's worth that $900, but, and in North Carolina, there's no trust and no thing to kind of hide that income. In other states, there are things set up where you can kind of put that income somewhere and build it up for their use later. But in North Carolina, where this family is, there's no such way to do that.
They've closed all those things, huh?
Yeah, in North Carolina they did, but in other states, depending on the state you're in, there are some legal things that you can do where you can put that extra money in a certain type of trust that then Medicaid wouldn't count it.
Hey, maybe this is part of this discussion or not, but I know it's come up before when other people I've talked to. Are there benefits available to help with housing costs in the future? Or is that just a complete family obligation that no matter where we have our child live in the future, whether it's with us or in some kind of home of some kind, our group facility, that we have to pay for it out of pocket? Is there stuff available for that?
There definitely are things available for that, and that's definitely in kind of the general Medicaid program. So when we become an adult, that's one of the things that we definitely want to. That's one of the reasons, actually, Keith, why families want to make sure they continue to qualify for kind of that generalized Medicaid and make sure dollars are not in their child's name. Is so that, and I think what we find is that most of us, when we think of Medicaid, we think basically just health care.
Right.
Right? Paying for the doctor visits, shots, we break a finger, whatever that is. We usually just think that's what it's going to cover. But in essence, there's so many different layers of Medicaid, and one is exactly what you just mentioned, is kind of that housing support. So there are dollars, if we qualify for Medicaid, to help pay a company that offers these residential programs, whether it is supervised apartments, or whether it is a group home, or whether, as you mentioned, it's kind of an institution. Again, so there are dollars available in that Medicaid strata to help pay for some housing, as long as it's it has to be with an organization that obviously is licensed with Medicaid and continues to work with the Medicaid program.
Tell me, Ryan, I have no clue. My son's 10, and I am just now starting to consider a lot of these things. What kind of dollars are we talking about that Medicaid provides? Is it like, here's a check for 1,000, here's a check for 5,000, here's a check, and how is it based? Is it based upon significantness of the significance of your disability? or what? How does the government decide that we're going to give X dollar, or is it just a finite amount? And then also the bigger question is, what kinds of things can we do if things change in the future and government benefits go away or get reduced or get whatever? I know it's lots of questions, but it's really, I think, one of the things that a lot of parents would want to know.
Yep, absolutely. And I'll take those in kind of stages.
Okay.
So the Medicaid kind of program in terms of the amounts that you would get, I mean, part of it is definitely set, right? If you want on the income side, right? If we're at age 18 and all of a sudden we've done everything right and our child doesn't have $2,000 of assets and is not receiving any income, maybe they're not able to work, well, and we get qualified for SSI and Medicaid. Well, SSI is gonna provide a set dollar amount of income every month, $734 in most places, right? If they live with you, now the government may reduce that by 1/3, because what they're going to do is they're going to deem the living space you're giving to them as basically income to them, because they'd have to pay rent somewhere else for it, right? So they're going to deem that as income and take that off that 734 and give them about 2/3 of that as an income. On the Medicaid side doesn't really come into play, while they're living at home, unless they do have a need for help on a daily basis, right? That parents are not able to provide. So there are kind of in-home community supports in that Medicaid program that will have a actual worker come out and make sure that your child's doing what they're supposed to be doing, is working on different goals, and trying to improve kind of their lifestyle. And each one of those is going to be individually based, and whatever organizations in your area that manages that kind of dollar flow for Medicaid would you'd go through an application process with them and an interview process, and they basically deem how many hours of services you would get from Medicaid.
Okay.
And those can always be adjusted, right? Those can change. I was just at a provider network of those kind of providers, right? They asked me to come speak, and they had like a half day of just conversations and brainstorming about what's going on. And one of them kind of said, I mean, I know every state is a little bit different, but a lot of states are having that funding issue, like you mentioned, right? And it was awful. This one organization was talking about this one woman who was having trouble in different living arrangements, and new rules that were coming into play really kind of forced their hand in reference to they had to move her to a new location, but because of some new rules, the money didn't follow her, and so now this organization now has to pay for that, but yet a lot of these organizations don't have a lot of money just sitting around. They really are. They really base it on cash flow from, okay, if we're managing this person's services, Medicaid's going to pay us, right? All of a sudden, they had to move them out of a not good situation for this young lady somewhere else, and then they're not getting paid, and Medicaid's saying, well, we're not going to pay you, or the Medicaid provider, not Medicaid directly, but the managed care organization managing those dollars said, well, we're not going to pay you until you get all that straight. And they're like, well, what are we going to do? And they literally said, at least this is what they told me, drop her off at the homeless shelter.
Wow.
Yeah, and I saw an article about 3 years ago about the same thing in Indiana, in Indianapolis. They said, well, if the money's not there, drop them off at the homeless shelter. So that goes kind of to your last question on there is,
well, my heart, Ryan.
Isn't it? It's callous and cold and absolutely unbelievable that would be the situation. And probably one of the situations that 44% of our homeless population are disabled.
I did not know that.
Yeah, it's
my myopic life. I'm only thinking about my son, and you're
well,
right.
of course you are.
There's a bigger picture of that, which is there are people out there who need help in other areas as well, and that it's just tough.
It is. It's a. I mean, it's but it's why it's one of the reasons why we're doing what we're doing today. Because if we can, and it's hard, man. And I mean, you're a dad. This topic is hard, but it's one of those topics that, and I hate to say, and I never want to make people feel bad or feel ashamed or frustrated or disappointed, but I'm always like, I mean, we can only control what we control, right? We can only control kind of our actions, right? We can't control what other people do. We can only control how we react to things and how we act or not act.
Right.
And I always think for parents, I mean, it's dangerous to rely completely on government benefits that we don't know how they're going to be allocated in the future. Right? Again, there's a lot of financial issues everywhere. Governments all over are strapped, and they're trying to find money. And unfortunately, the voice of the disabled is not very loud in the political spectrum. Right? The population as a percentage is not very high, which is awful to think that way.
Right.
So when I think that, I say, what, at least what parents can do is act the best you can, is start to really think about this kind of planning and get engaged with somebody who can help you. At least start to put a plan together and then monitor it if things change, right? And that's the most important part, is monitoring it as things change. And so what parents can do, I think, is act as best you can on your own, to start at least having some structure around this, so that if something does happen to you, there's at least something there. And again, a lot of families are strapped. I mean, financially, it's not like there's a lot of dollars flowing everywhere. But sometimes what younger families can do for a time period is try to get some insurance that would fund a trust. So at least you have some dollars in there that could fund it. What we do when we're thinking about kind of determining what the costs are to a family and to an individual is kind of give families different options, right? Well, if government benefits are the same as they are now, and this is kind of the situation we want for our child, then we can tell families, then you'll probably have to have about this extra a year to private pay. Right. If government benefits if government benefits stay where they are and they pay for what they pay now, but you want X, you want lifestyle X, it's probably going to be this amount. Right. And if government benefits go down, it means we're going to need this amount. And so at least we have some kind of idea of, okay, at least I know the target, that I'm heading for, going forward. And that's really the only thing we as parents can do is have the education, have the numbers, and then take action best we can, right? I mean, I always tell families, hey, don't feel bad if you can't do everything at once, because almost nobody can, right? Rome wasn't built in a day.
That's true.
Right? I mean, these things aren't built, over time. I mean, Ray Kroc started, McDonald's, in the 50s or 60s with one restaurant.
Right.
It wasn't all of a sudden McDonald's as we know it today all over the world. It was one place, but it had to start somewhere. And that's what I always say is, we don't know what government's going to do. I am nervous that the trend doesn't look like they are, opening their wallet.
They're closing it.
Right, exactly. And so to me it makes it more important for families to really think about that.
Right. I mean, we're not going to cover it today, but you and I typically talk a little bit after these things, but one of the things that's been near and dear to my heart is the whole issue of creating a voice for the special needs community. Not a voice for autism like Autism Speaks, and they do a tremendous job, but more like the ARC is such a more broad organization that represents all disabilities, from epilepsy to Down syndrome to autism to whatever that our children might be having. And we really need to have a voice, because without a voice, these kind of things are going to continue to happen to us. And it's going to happen to our children when we're not there to take care of them and protect them. So disabilities, as you know and as I know, affects everyone, whether you're black, white, rich, poor, you live in Latin America, you live in China, you live in California. We all have kids with special needs. And we all, as parents, are concerned with the same question: who's going to take care of our kid when we're no longer here? So I think there's so much commonality among us parents. I just think there's got to be a way to bring that message together and have a special voice kind of thing. And we'll talk about that more, but not have an autism voice, or not have this voice, but have a voice that is a collective community voice. Say, we will no longer allow you to do this to our kids, even if they're not our kids, other people's kids, and just shove them off at some homeless shelter. The reason they're able to do it is because, as I was, looking just at my little son, and I'm not saying I shouldn't, but there is a broader picture. And I'm gonna get off I'm gonna stop pontificating right now, but it's something near and dear to my heart, and I really hope there's a way that we can find to create that voice for the special needs community that represents all disabilities. So anyhow, sorry about that, Ryan. I went off on my little diatribe there, so I apologize for that.
I think we both did a little bit.
Because, you know, this is something near and dear. It's not just something in passing. I mean, you do it for a business, but you can tell in your face, you can tell in how you communicate that this is near and dear to your heart. And I do it for no compensation at all, because I realize that there's a lot of parents out there, like myself, who had no clue what to do or what all the issues were that we had to be concerned with. And I think that's what kept me up at night when I had that first initial thing. Is, oh my gosh, if I were not to wake up tomorrow, how's that going to affect my little guy? And I didn't have an answer to that, which drew me to you. So I think that we're at the beginning of just starting that process to educate more and more parents about what their options are, more and more parents about what's available to them, so that they can make better choices. And if we can, as part of that, find a way to create a voice, then so be it. I'm not opposed to that. So anyhow, I know we've been going on. So back to government benefits, Ryan. If there's anything you want to cover. Anything else you want to cover about government benefits for now? I'm sorry,
Well, I think for now, I think we've given everybody at least a whetting of the appetite. I know we have. I know we've had several people on. What I'd love to do is see if there are more questions that pop up, and if there are, I think Keith, you and I can kind of schedule another government benefits section. Right. To kind of review those questions. I think that'd be a great way to go, because let's hit where everybody, what everybody wants to hear about, and usually those are questions that you have on your mind. So. Right.
Yeah. Government benefits. I've heard the general phrases Medicaid, Medi-Cal, but I'm not touching any of that right now, so it doesn't really affect me. But I was thinking, okay, so you know my situation for me and my kids. That I talked to my brother and I talked to my sister, and I said that when my mom passes, can I buy you guys out of the interest of my mom's house so that my son has a place to live that he's comfortable with, that he knows, he's familiar with, that's close to all his family, etc. And they're all, oh, no problem. For them, it was just like they get cashed out. Cool, it's a great place for Xander to live that he's already comfortable with, that he knows. So that's my solution for housing long term, but other people may not have the same circumstances, right? And how do we come up and help them come up with solutions for themselves? And that's why I was asking about the housing. I didn't know where housing came, so it's good to hear it comes out of Medicaid, along with other supplemental services that people could need in a housing environment. Someone comes in to help clean them. Someone comes in to help cook for them. Someone takes them to the store to go shopping with them, and all those things, right?
Yes.
And I know we're not going to talk about it today, but I know that you and I chatted last time about some ideas you have on that, so maybe we can share that in the future about how we can help pay it forward with other families and grow something here. So anyhow, I think that's good for today, Ryan, unless you have something you want to end with. Now, the next topic, unless we do a segue into continuing answering questions, is communication plan. Now, that may not sound super exciting, but I think it's probably equally important to any other topic we've talked about, because if you don't have a communications plan in place, and you do the special needs trust, and you do the letter of intent, and you do all this kind of stuff, right? It sounds like I know what I'm talking about now, doesn't it?
You do know what you're talking about. It's great. I love it.
And if you do all that kind of stuff, but you forget to tell grandma or Auntie Lisbeth or whatever to not give money to your son or to your daughter directly, but to give it in the name of this trust, everything you can have done could be gone on for naught. So that's why the communication plan is so important, that you find who could possibly or consider giving money to your child, and make sure they give it to them the right way, money and or assets. So I don't want people to think, oh, communication plan, that I just need to tell my husband, he needs to tell. No, it's bigger than that. If any person who's in your lineage decides to give money to your child because they know he's got a disability and they're trying to help,
right,
that could put everything in jeopardy. So I know you've got some ideas relative to that, and I probably have taken away everything you were going to say. I apologize for that, right?
No, it's perfect. It's perfect. We'll have more to talk about. That'll be good.
You're assistant now. Anyhow, Ryan, so anything else you want to cover with communication plan for next time?
No, I think you covered it. I think we'll be ready to go.
Excellent, excellent. I appreciate your time, Ryan, and thank you. Oh, hold on, I got a question here from Roxanne Davenport, who's, I believe, in North Carolina with you. So, Roxanne, hello. You can't see us, but we're saying hello to you.
Hey.
And she was saying that she had a daughter who was already 18 who had her ankle shattered and had to get it fused with titanium. And she was asking, and maybe this is something you can or cannot ask, is there any areas that are people or organizations that are working with people with disabilities and jobs? And, you know, we want our kids to have a meaningful existence and to work and be employed. And I think that's what Roxanne is sort of asking about. So anyhow, you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, there certainly are different organizations. So certainly in North Carolina, there's an organization called Vocational Rehab that's kind of all over the state. That may be a good place to call and have a conversation about. And then depending on where she is and where everybody is, there are organizations in your local area that do what they call supportive employment. And that's another layer of that government benefit that basically Medicaid helps to cover. Paying someone to help your child and support them in their ability and to be successful in a workplace. Mm-hmm. And so that's another layer of Medicaid that we don't normally think about, but it's there. And so depending on your local area, again, you know, I always go back to those advocacy organizations, as you said. You know, if you have a local ARC, you know, or you're involved in another different local organization, you know, call them. They'll probably have a list of those organizations that can help you in your local area with that kind of supportive employment and kind of if they can get a job and work through that.
Okay. Hey, another question came in, Ryan. Do you mind? Oh, hold on. Sorry about that. I thought I turned off all possibilities for people to call. So a question came in from Sherry Scruggs, and I apologize, Sherry, if I'm butchering your last name. I apologize. It's just me. So she says, so do I understand Ryan to say that my child receives Social Security now, that could reduce my benefit later? And how would that affect the non-custodial parent?
If the child receives Social Security now,
she's asking, will that potentially reduce her benefit later?
Will that reduce mom's retirement benefit?
Yeah, could reduce her benefit. So it doesn't affect it. So if your child's getting Social Security now, has no effect on your retirement.
No.
And then the second question, maybe it's unrelated to that, and how would that affect the non-custodial parent? So apparently she's got a ex-husband or father of the child. Does it affect that person in any way?
No.
Unrelated. So 3 different people, 3 different benefits, government deals
Right.
with you on an individual basis. Okay.
Right.
Hopefully, Sherry, that answered your question. If you have any others, if you want to ask them before I let Ryan go, type quickly. So anyhow, Ryan and I are excited about doing this project with you guys, and we're finally figuring it out toward the tail end of our series. So we're going to invite Ryan to come join us in the future, even after this series is done, because he's just a tremendous wealth of knowledge and information available, and we just really appreciate him giving so freely of his time. So I see no other questions coming in, so Ryan, we will end the conversation. And like I say, if you have any other questions you want to do, just feel free to enter them here into the comment section of the event, and we will get to them and we'll get back to you. Again, everybody, Ryan, thank you for your time.
Thank you guys. Appreciate it, Keith.
All right, talk to you in a bit.
You got it.